Yeah.
Pow,
It's
pow, pow, pow,
4 in the morning.
pow, pow, pow,
Daryl Hamish,
pow.
your early morning radio
Batman
show.
Scoop, Brooklyn Clay, dollar bill, yo, dollar bill, yo.
It's the radio show with the least consistent song choices ever.
And now for Tom Jones.
What does it mean to have a human in the loop?
Human in the loop.
Human in the loop. What in the world is a human in the loop?
Being a human in the loop.
AI in the loop. Humans in charge.
Welcome to Human in the Loop.
Okay, so this is the loop back where we loop back to what we said last week, correct mistakes, dive a little deeper into some source material, and find out what's going on in the world of AI and technology this week. So, according to Perplexity, I'm told that there's no specific evidence that Tim Cook actually said he could get 10,000 PhD candidates in China. However, there is a video that he said that Apple is manufactured in China, not because of cheap labor, but because he thinks that you could fill multiple football fields with the amount of talent in there.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I get most of my information from the internet, like most of us these days. I think it's been a while since I've been in the library. I went and did a bit of a Google to see if I could find the specific source. Because I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I kind of vaguely remember this. This one I'm pretty sure I remember, like a specific, like him talking about a number of something. I don't remember if it was PhD candidates or masters or like just, it's in general some sort of highly skilled.
Is this a hallucination?
Well, I can't find it. Even if it was on the internet, that doesn't mean it's true, right? Like there's plenty of, like this partial Mandela effect hallucination that I've remembered or didn't remember happens to journalists and other people who write stuff online as well. So, but yeah, I can't find a specific source for that other than the one that you also found, several sources of him talking about how he doesn't, or Apple doesn't manufacture in China because it's a low cost. In fact, he says it's not low cost anymore, but because of the depth of talent that is available.
Yeah.
And the specific article, I think he's actually talking about tooling engineers, like the guys who set up CNC milling and stuff. But I think it's a general theme.
Around about that same point, I'll pass on some lovely feedback from mine own father, who said he thought you guys were very smart and pragmatic, but he emphasized, Elena, China cannot sustain itself. You need to read the book I've recommended and you will get a very different perspective. China imports almost everything and does still need the rest of the world to survive. You also asked, what has New Zealand got? And you might be surprised to know that in this book, New Zealand is mentioned in a very generally positive way. And the book he's referring to, which I'll try and read soon, is The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zeihan. Heard of it? Read it?
I know Peter Zeihan.
You know him?
I've seen him on YouTube sometimes.
Oh, I know him and that I've seen him online.
Yeah, I know of him. There's definitely like most countries import stuff. In fact, I think all, other than, what was it, the island with the penguins, but otherwise all countries import things, right? That's for a couple of three reasons. It might be that the stuff they want, they physically can't manufacture, right? Like, as far as I know, New Zealand doesn't have a huge deposit of lithium sitting around somewhere. So if we want lithium, we have to import it. Sometimes it's for resiliency, right? We grow lots of apples, but sometimes we might have a really bad apple harvest one year. We want a alternative source of apples so that if we can't grow apples in a year, it doesn't mean we have to go without apples. And sometimes it's for cost, right? Like we're globalizing all manufacturing. We could make it in New Zealand, but we choose to make it somewhere else because it's more effective, more efficient. Like most countries, New Zealand probably could, like if international trade just became impossible and we were closed off from the rest of the world, New Zealand could survive as a country, but we would have to take a hit to our standard of living, right? There's things that we can't manufacture here. We can't manufacture lithium batteries. We can't manufacture cell phones, things like that. But we can probably produce enough food. It might be a bit more boring than we're used to, right? Because you're not going to be able to get mangoes or any sort of spices.
Looping back to something Danu said, sorry, that feels like a real cut-off, but I'm trying to be efficient with my time. Yes, Microsoft blocks $4 billion in AI-driven scam attempts. between April 2024 and April 2025. So it was over a year. But yeah, they highlighted it in their cyber signals report. AI has been fueling modern scams through just being a low barrier for criminals, e-commerce fraud, job market scamming, and bot signups. And Microsoft is countermeasuring this with machine learning to detect product safeguards, collaboration and policy, and customer guidance. So that was pretty interesting. Looping back on the radio station, I mean, we knew that story was a thing when we talked about it, but just to dive into a little bit more, the radio station did face significant backlash for not disclosing it. Industry professionals have been really critical of it because they see it as taking away from their industry. Most listeners felt deceived. There were quotes like, "I can't believe I was listening to a robot this whole time. It's creepy that they didn't tell us she was real." Radio is supposed to be about real people and genuine connections. And interestingly, let me just scroll down. The Australian Radio Network, ARN, who ran the radio station, did not have a formal AI policy or risk mitigation strategy in place before launching this experiment. Multiple reports confirmed that there were no legal requirements in Australia mandating AI disclosure at the time that they started this experiment. So the artificial nature for listeners was strongly criticised because they feel that it was a lack of transparency, and it has highlighted the need for reform.
There's a whole, probably series we could do on the risk profiles of organizations, right? And how some organizations can and are willing to take on more or less risk, and what that means in terms of innovation capacity and capability as well, right?
Yeah.
If you've got nothing to lose, you can take a riskier strategy in terms of product because if it works, great, you've won the lotto. And if it doesn't work, well, you didn't have any money in the first place.
The last thing I wanted to say was just that Bruce Willis's $5 million salary for his role in Die Hard was a record-breaking salary at the time for an actor who had not even been proven to be a film star. And I look forward to managing to make John McClane a feature of every episode. It's like the Easter egg. It'll be the Die Hard that never dies. I said, where does New Zealand play and what is our strength? And you launched in with a very prejudgmental, Hamish is going to have such an unsavory opinion. And we talked and we went on some side quests and we never got to find out where Hamish thinks New Zealand is strong.
For AI, right?
I think for technology.
For technology, yeah.
Technology.
Being last. So, whoops, ouch, too harsh.
New Zealand has this sort of somewhat now looked down upon view of a number 8 wire sort of approach to things where you just figure out, it's to use my terrible 80s TV references, would MacGyver a solution together that just works, right?
Bamboo microlight.
Yeah.
You guys remember that episode? He builds an entire microlight aircraft with a lawnmower engine and just bamboo.
I think he defeated an army with 3 paper clips and a rubber.
Yeah. And he got out of some giant silo thing that he was locked in with a bottle of detergent and some kind of chemical reaction. But I loved the voiceover. She was just what a lot of people don't know is that if you were to mix cocaine and dishwashing fluid, you could actually get really
Drug references on 80s TV. And that sort of has a bad rap these days, but part of it comes from we needed to solve problems with the stuff that was available to us, right? So in some ways, it's the opposite of the advantage that China has. China has access to everything, right? And so you don't need to think, how can I solve this problem with the things that I've got? There's no restriction on you. And in some cases, that lack of, other than cost, some cases that lack of restriction doesn't lead to innovation, right? That you can solve this problem with this bolt, you'll definitely have that bolt. You can solve this problem with that chip, you'll definitely have that chip, right? You never have to think about a clever or innovative way to solve the problem because you already have the solution sitting in a shop or a factory or a warehouse somewhere nearby. Whereas we're relatively constrained in terms of our access to physical stuff, but we've got lots of clever people and we attract lots of clever people. So we've got a capability to figure out innovative solutions to problems with the things that we have to hand. Right? We generally don't have a particularly generous venture capital culture. And so we have a lot more bootstrapped companies that, have figured out how to get themselves off the ground just with the revenue that they can generate from a useful product off the go. Our data centers, we don't have a big cloud data center in New Zealand at the moment, although they're all coming. I think the Microsoft one is starting to be generally available. But that's meant that we've had to figure out ways to solve latency and, resiliency when we're on the end of a long cable that connects to our servers. So that restriction breeds innovation. It can also, if you're not careful, breed a lack of seriousness, right? The negative view of number 8 wire is it's a solution that lasts for only as long as it needs to, and then it falls apart, or maybe not quite as long as it needs to. But I think we've gotten better with that. We've managed to continue to maintain that innovation while also getting more serious about the compliance and business expectations of the global economy.
So we should lean into standardization? I don't know. Am I summarizing? Well, I don't know. We are one of the, 5 or 6 countries in the world that has space launch capability? It's United States, China, Europe. Is that a country? I don't know. But there's only 4 countries that can launch rocket. I think France might be one of the actual country that launches the rockets. And everybody else piggybacks off one of these 4 countries. And then New Zealand's just randomly there alone as full launch capability. And you're just like, what? Why? How? We might be, I don't know. But we make this mistake a lot. Yeah. Gisborne. Yeah.
Because there's
the Electron.
I don't play Kerbal Space Program, but I know that there is an advantage to launching near the equator, right? You get some sort of slingshot benefit in terms of getting up to orbital.
Yeah, I think we just have really clear airspace. So there's a more interesting benefit there. But also the Electron's unmanned, so it's a much smaller craft. But yeah, we're not trying to launch a super heavy or a Saturn V. But yeah, just random. There's just moments of I'm still yet to figure out if we have a culture of innovation or the occasional statistical anomaly. It's really harsh of me to say that, but we simply don't have the numbers of unicorns. If you look at the venture capital, whether we like it or not, America, there are hotspots around MIT and the universities in, Stanford and all those, where they do produce a unicorn once a year. It's a factory line. And those unicorns have revenue and they eventually succeed. I mean, sure, there's 100 that die on the way to get there, but they've got a system of producing this that you can't simply say they're anomalies.
Succeeded on the world stage.
Yeah, and with New Zealand, there doesn't seem to be a consistent, repeatable theme, right? After Zero, there should have been 50 other reasonable companies, maybe 50 is too much, but at least another 10 kind of finance-based startups that kind of get to a listed state or a unicorn state. We didn't really see that. We had a couple of startups like Henry and things like that and PushPay that kind of got there, but would we say that New Zealand is known for fintech startups? You wouldn't say, right? And then RocketWorks, incredible story, but we're still not known for space stuff. So are we going to have a whole bunch of space industry pop out of it? Maybe.
I don't think there's a strong correlation between innovative and financial success. Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nikola Tesla is proof.
Yeah, but
died broke and alone in a hotel room out of his mind because he'd rather see the idea succeed. I mean, but he went crazy. But I think you're right. New Zealand has the same sort of thing. The McLaren car brand, that should be a New Zealand company, but it's a British company using a New Zealand nameplate, and it's not even licensed, as far as I understand. We don't earn $1, or the McLaren estate, I don't think, actually earns $1 out of that. I think we're really bad at commercialization. I think, New Zealand...
The sort of personality, that likes playing with stuff and being innovative is not necessarily, in fact, often is not the same sort of personality as the personality who likes pushing the maximum commercial benefit out of an idea.
compliance. No, scaling. Yeah, it's hard. It's boring stuff that lets you scale, right?
It's not just boring, it's sales and marketing and, pushing people for money. And often innovative people, they kind of like, they're interested in solving puzzles. They've solved the puzzle, right? That's the fun bit done.
Yeah.
And now you're saying, now you want me to go and like, I personally get really annoyed. I accept it these days, but like you can't just, and this surprises a lot of engineers. You can't just put something great on the internet and have people find it and use it, right? Like that just doesn't really happen that often. People say, oh, well, this will take off by word of mouth. Maybe, but that's pretty unreliable and it generally doesn't happen, right? And marketing should be something we can do without, but it's not.
And you're saying you need marketing? You need marketing.
He's conceited. Quick, write it down.
I'm saying you need marketing for commercial financial success. An alternative would just be to burn capitalism down, and then we wouldn't need marketing at all. If there's nobody saying that, if everybody is saying, commercial copywriting, AI does fine, then we got a bullshit job. Oh.
We can say that. We're allowed to say that because we're coders.
Yeah.
We have a bullshit job. We've literally seen computers. Yeah. You won't lose your job to AI. You'll lose your job to someone who knows how to use AI.
So everyone else has left and left me to do a wrap up by myself. Not going to say tidying up other people's nests like usual. Because they get cut out. So that's fine. Yeah, hope you've enjoyed the podcast so far. Hope you enjoyed whatever this thing was between the podcasts. From next week, we're going to start having guests. And yeah, we're starting with Melindy, for our CEO of Outward Bound. We're going to be talking about youth access to social media and whether we should introduce legislation to help control the harm that the evidence is increasingly suggesting comes from that. And it should be better. So if you already like this, amazing, because it'll be even better than the thing you already liked. If you didn't like this, give it a go next week, because it might be good enough to like. See you next week.